Hello, beautiful people. My name is Kristen. Thank you for stopping by my channel. Today, we are going to be discussing Brandon Sanderson's Wind and Truth, the fifth in the Stormlight series. I do want to disclaim, yes, I know I've got a little bandage on my nose. I did have a touch of skin cancer back in September, and then there was built up a bunch of scar tissue that was just kind of bothering me, so they removed that. They want me to keep ointment and a bandage on it for a couple days, but I know you're not here to see me. You're here to talk about Wind and Truth. So this first part I will absolutely be spoiler free, and then I will give clear indication that spoilers are coming, and we'll talk about it in its fullness, because honestly I can't give my full opinion and kind of particularly the parts that I struggled with without giving away what it was that I was disappointed about, right? So overall, I even have another video about why you should read Stormlight, and I think that this is a beautiful series. I stand by it. I stay in love with the overall series. I think it is such an intense, immense world that is set in a universe completely other than ours. It has, I want to say spiritual beings, but they're more than that. They're just other dimensional beings, I would say, that become godlike for those who do not quite have the same abilities or properties of these other creatures. I love the different series of creatures. I love how it's almost a commentary on not humanity, obviously, because we're talking about non-human species, but just that getting along in the universe. It goes back to my love of Star Trek shows and having that prime directive of not doing harm, of not interfering with other intelligent, progressive states. Where are the rights, if you will, of other species? How do we get along in the universe? And then you have these gods that are fighting and warring, and there are spiritual planes and dream-like shadow planes, and there are abilities to hold powers and stormlight and the void light into other spheres and articles and objects. It's just a beautiful dance of deeply developed characters, some of whom you may be less inclined to, love. And I will say that I agree with what I had heard some people saying before I even picked up the book. I watched a few non-spoiler reviews and was a little hesitant because one of the things was that the point of view keeps changing so much in this one that you often don't get enough immersive time with the characters that we love. And I can appreciate that viewpoint because characters are really important in the Sanderson world. So hopefully maybe he hears some of that feedback, and in future books he gives us more time with each one. I did actually enjoy how this particular one's the only one that has it lined up as a 10-day sequence and is very rigid about here's day 1, here's day 2, and that's part of the reason why it has to switch viewpoints so much, because we're talking about one point of time and then all these different perspectives. And I did appreciate that attempt, that kind of intensity of keeping the plot and the pace, if you will, going, because we kind of had a deadline or a timeline that we are working through. But overall, I think it's a stronger choice to spend more time with the character and then go back and repeat, day 1, if it had been day 1 this character all the way through, day 1 this, and I think I personally would have appreciated that even more. The artwork in this is beautiful. I will say, I'll show some of the cover art here, and then if I can find the beginnings of each chapter, have this is like the symbol of kind of who's going to be, which storyline we're going to follow, and then this arch that portrays each chapter deteriorates and falls apart as we go along in the book. So as you go along, there's like decay and destruction of the arch itself, whereas by the time you're near the end of the book, you're looking at remnants of the arch. And so you have this complete kind of darkness, because so much of this is about the light, right? It's about the power and the goodness of the Storm Father and the storm light, and trying to capitalize on that to overcome the voids and the darkness. And so this book kind of leads up, it's the end of the first arc, but it's leading up to this crescendo of clash and destruction. And I think that that's very engaging, and I really enjoyed that. And I really did enjoy where each of our main characters, kind of what happens to them and how it ends up. And I can't say the specifics obviously without spoiling, but I will talk about that a little bit in the spoiler section if you have read it. But I would say overall, super happy I read this. I would definitely still, for me personally, give this 3.5 to even 4 stars as far as my enjoyment, being engaged, wanting to know what happened next. I was bothered somewhat by the quick change of points of view, but I got all the characters that I love kept coming back. So there weren't like a big omission in that way, as well as I really did kind of struggle a little bit with some of the dialogue. Didn't feel as genuine to those characters. There's been a lot of talk in the spoiler-free reviews I saw about modern language, and I do have to strongly agree with that assessment. I felt like a lot of his YA books and even middle grade, his Alcatraz librarian books, a lot of that kind of snarky slang felt like it was coming into the storm, this particular, not previous really, I hadn't noticed it in previous Stormlight, but in this one. And I personally didn't appreciate that. I felt like, oh, that's not, part of this world, if that makes sense. It's not like the phrases or the expressions bothered me personally in what they were. It just didn't feel as genuine to this world and these particular characters. So I will agree with that. So I think that is the end of my spoiler-free review. Overall, I think it's worth reading. I'm going to continue to read on in the series. I'm definitely not spoiled for wanting to know what continues to happen in this universe and with these characters. I really appreciate all of that. I am hopeful that maybe the future ones are not going to have the be limited in a particular time, but can allow us more time with some of these characters and see what happens to them into the future. So that's my spoiler free. Now I'm going to do spoilers. So this, if you have not gotten a chance to read it, thank you for stopping by. Like and subscribe. Come back and find it again when you've read it. And I look forward to talking to you then. And for those who have read it and just want to kind of hear where I landed with what actually happened, this is your final 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're talking about it. So I liked that kind of the characters that we first were introduced to and kind of latched onto at the very beginning of Way of Kings. Shallan and Kaladin and Dalinar, and that we get to see them, see how they're going to still be around, how they're going to play into some kind of this universe in the future. But obviously we have a lot of immortal beings that will continue to be there. I was predicting that all of our main characters were going to kind of die in this last ferocious battle and leave some kind of hope or remnant or something that somebody else was going to find in the future, kind of maybe along the lines of Dune or something of that nature. But they're going to be there. They became kind of these immortalized herald beings that get to kind of join us, although a lot of these other characters that we came to know obviously are not necessarily going to be there. But yeah, we're going to see how this finally plays out with these immortal gods, odium and honor. And it's interesting though, because I'm not really emotionally tied to the Stormfather coming back, or or honor being restored. Although it's interesting that his name is Honor, though, right? Because you always would want honor to prevail. So, but I am invested in the character. So it's an interesting choice. It was kind of surprising to me that they remained kind of all viable, if you will, at the end of this. But biggest probably disappointment or letdown, if you will, is that we've been waiting this whole time for this big championship, and instead of this big duel where maybe we are on the edge of our seats, maybe losing a main character and just so invested in the war, that it comes down to just like this moral King Solomon choice. It's like, do you pick this thing that is individually important or the collective good? And I can appreciate that philosophical question or struggle, but it was just like, that's like not a fulfilling kind of thing for what it was, for that quest and that waiting for that. And then even how it played out, I'm not sure that was completely satisfying. So there's that. I did struggle with the more informal, I would call it. The word I keep coming back to is this informal. It felt younger, it felt more informal, and I just feel like, yes, there's some room for some character development or change, but they all tended to go that way. And also the strong dealings with the internal, right? You had all of these struggles of trying to make terms with their childhood, trying to make terms with the past. And I wondered if that wasn't in part because Brandon Sanderson is a professor and deals with young adults and has witnessed firsthand and really heartfelt the increase of anxiety, particularly in the young students that he would be working with. If he doesn't want to address some of that or speak to some of that or be faithful to honoring ways to work on that. So like all of his characters needed to work on that, and I appreciate that on one level, but it didn't again feel like that would be the reality. Like that deep self-awareness is beautiful, but I think it's less common. I don't think every single character would be experiencing that or doing that, although I do appreciate and understand that Kaladin is a huge force of that, and he is such a main character that kind of deals with all the characters. So for him to become the therapist, if you will, it's an interesting choice, and I appreciate it, particularly with how much of his guilt and shame is tied into the loss of Tien and trying to redeem that for himself and make peace with that himself. But it was too much. I'm just gonna say it was too much. I mean, this is a big chunky boy that can handle a lot, but it could have been less chunky and handling less of that. That's my overall assessment. So again, I mean, I still find this an excellent book. It's definitely far from 5 stars for me, but I think it's a good 4-star. It is well above my average read as far as investing in it, enjoying it, being intrigued by it, wanting to know what the next level is going to be, and keep me wanting to come back and to spend time in this universe. So that's what I thought. What do you think? Do you think that this is worthy of going on? Are you in the camp that wants to be done with Sanderson now, or are you going to re-enter in, I think I heard 2033 for the next book? So I mean, we get time to think about it, right? So there it is, my thoughts on Wind and Truth. Have a great day. Happy reading, y'all. Like and subscribe. Hang around. Leave me a comment. Take care now.